بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم لا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم الحمد لله رب العالمين وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد وآله الطيبين الطاهرين اللهم أخرجني من ظلمات الوهم وأكرمني بنور الفهم اللهم افتح علينا أبواب رحمتك وانشر علينا خزائن علومك برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين. We have tawfiq to continue our study of the Illuminationist school of philosophy. And as you remember, in the last session before Nowruz, we talked about the hierarchical lights, which are immaterial, and they are the principles, usul, or main lights, ummahat. And then we said we will continue next week with the horizontal lights, anwar arzi. So inshallah today we want to discuss this. We will again be using the book Daramadi bar Tarikh Falsafe Islami, an introduction to history of Islamic philosophy, volume 3, the discussion about Hikmat Ishraqi. Okay, so Sohrawardi has, as you know, lots of sympathy with Plato, and one idea which is very prominent in Platonic philosophy is what we call muthul, or ideas, from eidos in Greek. And these are the lords, Rab. These are the main responsible for material substances, jawahir maddi. For example, for human beings, we have one immaterial being, that all human beings are instances of that. For horse, for example, for cow, etc., for stone, for rose flower. So this idea, of course, is very important in Platonic philosophy, but not accepted by, for example, Aristotle. For Aristotle, we don't have something separate and independent as misal or idea for humanity. We have a universal concept or notion of human being, but that doesn't have independent existence. Among Muslim philosophers, peripatetic philosophers have taken the side of Aristotle in this issue. Of course, they have their own also reasons. Sheikh Ishraq has taken the side of Plato, and he has his own also arguments, plus he repeatedly had mystical experiences and visions of these ideas, as he says in some of his works. So that made him very convinced. Of course, you know that for someone who has not had those experiences, those are not enough to make him certain. We know that person, for example, like Sheikh Ishraq, is honest, but we cannot be sure that what he really experienced is the existence of these ideas. Because in mystical experiences, one thing is experience itself, the other is interpretation. The experience itself certainly can be happening to the person and be known to him through knowledge by presence. And if we trust that person, we may say this, yes, he had this experience, if you are sure. But we don't have knowledge by presence about that experience. But when it comes to interpretation, even if that person was very, very good and honest person, still the interpretation is shaped and formed and influenced by his general way of thinking, metaphysical, physical, scientific frameworks that he has. Therefore, the same experience, if it happens to a great scholar who is very experienced, who has expertise in different fields, who has had lots of these experiences before, may be interpreted different from the same experience if it happens to someone who is not experienced, not very knowledgeable, for the first time have this. Sometimes, even a person who is having this for the first time might be overwhelmed. So, I personally appreciate when Sheikh Ishraq says he had, lots of mystical experiences and mukashif about, these ideas. I appreciate, I respect, I take it seriously, but it doesn't prove for me that they exist. Maybe it was something else. Anyway, just I wanted to say this at the beginning, that he has his own reasons, including mystical experiences. So, in his structure of lights, after we talked about Allah, who is Nurul Anwar, then we said Nur Aghrab, then we had hierarchical lights. Now, after that, we have Anwar Qahire Arzi, the horizontal, as we said, lights which are Qahira, which are dominant. These are not for the material world, material things, which have some darkness inside as well. And these are the same as Musulla Aflatuni. These horizontal ones are mutakafi'ah. What does it mean, mutakafi'ah? Does it mean that they are equal? The intensity or weakness are the same? Shidda and dha'f are the same? No. The horizontal light of for example, human being, something like human being, and a horse and a plant and for example, a stone, are mutakafi, but not mutasawi. What does it mean they are mutakafi? Means they are at the same level. It's not hierarchical, because those which are hierarchical, everyone is the cause for the lower one. So there is a graded line here, and everyone which is lower is under the one which is higher. But here, although there are different degrees, but they are not cause for each other or effect for each other. They are at the same level. So mutakafa in this sense. So this is different from mutasawi. This is one of the major aspects of his philosophical system. He has tried to answer and refute objections of peripatetic philosophers about Muthula Aflatuni, bring his arguments, plus saying that he has himself witnessed or had intuition, mystical intuition about these things. He says, everything in this material world, even nufus, even the souls, they must have a kind of representative, a kind of nemune, sample in the realm of uqul and intellects, which is the origin or principle for these ones. And material individuals are just shadow or manifestation for that. Therefore, he calls them Arbab Anwa, Rabbun Nur. Rab means Lord, Master. So for every species, there is a Lord. For horse, for cow, for human being, etc. Also, he calls Muthul Nuri. These are ideas which are from the light. But under them, we have material individuals which are called Dhil, shadow, or Sanam, or Telesm, something not very desirable, very nice, and certainly, solid and, concrete and limited. And these Muthul Aflatun, these Anwar Arziye, Qahire, are only for substances, material substances. For example, human beings, or plaster, or wood, or stone, or plants, for their substance. A'raz, for example, their color, their, I don't know whether they are, for example, soft or not, their smell, this kind of a'raz, accidents, they don't have Rabbun Nur. So Rabbun Nur of insan is responsible for individual human beings plus their a'raz. A'raz are not independently under management of something for themselves, Rabbun Nur for themselves. Also, they are for Anwar, Nur, a species, not for Ajnas, genus. Ajnas, they don't have Rabbun Nur. It's also understandable from the name that he uses, Rabbun Nur, not Rabbun Nur, Rabbul Jins. It's just Rabbun Nur. So everything has to come, whether it's A'raz or Ajnas, from Rabbun Nur for the Nur. And he says these accidents that are in Jawahir Maddi, in material substances, these are Nesab Ruhani, these are spiritual relations that Rabbun No, according to the situation of each instance or individual, each fard, grants. One of the arguments of Sheikh Ishraq for having Musul Aflatuni or Anwar Arziye Qahire is the famous philosophical rule which is Imkan Ashraf. And actually this is a rule which is very important in Sheikh Ishraq's school of philosophy, Qa'idiya Imkan Ashraf. We have several times in the past in courses on philosophy and even theology have mentioned this. According to this philosophical rule, if something lower exists, for example, a lower existence, a lower perfection, then there must be something higher than that. Because from absolute perfection, we cannot come by jumping or tafra to something very low. Before we can have that what is very low, we should have something above it under wajibul wujud. And then maybe something above what was above under. It depends how far we have come down. So this is very important rule in Sheikh Ishraq, and we use this actually later also for establishing Alam Misal Munfasil. We will talk about it later. So he uses Qa'idiya Imkan Ashraf to argue against Aristotle and peripatetic philosophers and say that there must be something between uqul mujarrade and material substances. And when we say this is also a very important point. These uqul, these Anwar Qahiriya Arziye, these Musul Aflatuni, whatever you call them, they do tadbir, they maintain and manage material substances. It's not like the way that nufus or souls manage and run their bodies. For example, human beings have soul also, and the soul is responsible for managing body. Or animals the same. Even plants, they have souls. The difference is that soul in animals or human beings or plants is for one body, one soul, one body. And this soul is affected from that body in the same way that, or at the same time, not in the same way, but at the same time that the soul affects body, body affects the soul. If the soul, for example, is responsible for a body that is destroyed, the soul cannot continue, its activities. But when it comes to Musul Aflatuni, there is not one Rabbun No, one body. Let me say, physical substances are run under that Rabbun No. It's not one and one. One soul, one body. One soul, one Johar Mati. No. One Rabbun No for maybe billions of human beings. And if one is sad or happy, if one is ill, if one is healthy, if one dies, it doesn't affect Rabbun No. So Rabbun No is not like nafs for body. The relation between Rabbun No and individuals is from top to bottom, not like kind of reciprocal or mutual, something like this. So their istikmal or perfection is not through that material substance, because there are many of them, and their destruction also is not through them. So Muthul Aflatuni are from Mufaraqat, they're abstract, immaterial, and Anwar Qahira, they're dominant lights. And since between them there is no cause and effect relation between these horizontal ones, so they are considered as mutakafi'ah. Mutakafi'ah means at the same level, not necessarily equal in intensity. Then, because Arbab Anwa, these Musula Aflatuni, are different themselves in their strengths, in their weakness, therefore the situation can be different for them. Some of them, they can directly and independently manage their instances, their afrad of the no'. They can manage them. Some of them need a soul, a nafs, to be between them and the body. So there is a chance that we may need a soul to be there. For example, if you want to have a life like human life, with all the aspects and dimensions, you need soul. Rabbun of insan is not sufficient. You need to have also soul for every human being. But if it is for wood and plaster and soil, you don't need nafs. Rabbun of them is enough. Sometimes they call Muthul Aflatuni Muthul Kulli, or Kulli for every species. But Sheikh Ishraq is very careful to warn us, he very much warns us not to think Kulli is always used in the same sense. Kulli, in contrast to Juz'i that we study at the beginning of Ilmul Mantiq, مفهوم لا يمتنع فرض صدقه على كثيرين or انطباق صدقه على كثيرين, a concept that it's possible, it's likely to be applied to more than one instance. That kulli is different from Musula Aflatuni, which are called Musule Kulli. Also, it's different from kulli in the sense of asl and bunyad, principle and foundation. This is different. Or from fard muntashir, an unknown individual among several. No, when we say kulli, it just means that it is something that has relation and management for all the individuals, and not just one, all the individuals, all the instances of one no. This is the meaning of kulli. As you know, one of the projects of Sheikh Ishraq is to bring harmony to the ideas of Plato, Persian, ancient Iranian Persian or ancient Persian Iranian philosophers, and also some of the ideas of mystics in Greek culture. So he tries to bring them together and give a philosophical explanation for them. So, for example, some of the things about different lights that we have in ancient Iranian philosophy, he keeps them but gives a philosophical explanation. Inshallah, later we will talk about, for example, light of nufus, which we mentioned, I think, in the first session or second session. And he talks about light of nufus and sani and other things. We will talk about it, inshallah, and uses terms like the names that we use for months, which come from ancient Farsi culture. Before we reach nufus, we need to discuss one more thing. As you remember, in philosophy, normally we say Jawhar has 5 types. Substance has 5 types. Uqul, nufus, jism, madde, surat. Uqul are immaterial, without any potentiality. It's not aql of insan, we have many times said. Nufus essentially is immaterial, but in action needs a body, needs physical substances. And then we have jism, which is a type of substance which is 3-dimensional. And then we have madde, which is substance responsible for potentiality and accepting forms, and surah, which is the form which gives actuality. There is no burhan, it seems there is no demonstration, no proof for these 5, that it cannot be 6, it cannot be 7. You can prove that there is need for this, although there is discussion about madde, but anyway, you can bring evidence for these 5. But why there is no 6? Why there is no 7? Sheikh Ishraq says we have actually another one, another substance, and that is Jawhar Mithali. And this Jawhar Mithali is something which is different from Muthul Aflatuni. Please be careful. Muthul Aflatuni don't have particularities that we have in Mithal. Mithal is like what you see. Mithal is what you see during the dreams. When you see a person in the dream, this is not Rabbun, no. You cannot say because it is not material substance, it is Mithal Aflatuni. No. Mithal Aflatuni doesn't have any particularity. The human being that you see in the dream has size, has gender, has shape, has color, lots of, where is it standing? The style, is it standing, sitting, bending? There are lots of particularities there, but there is no substance. I mean, physical substance. There is no, physical mass. There's no germ, mystical mass. There's no there. This is mithal. This, of course, mithal in the dream can be misal muttasil, connected to us. Maybe there is nothing outside me. Maybe This dream is through getting access to another reality. Then this is misal munfasil. It's not inside me, so that if I don't dream or if I die, it's finished. We have a whole domain in which we have substances whose nature, whose reality is lower than aql and above madde or physical substances. This is misal munfasil. Okay? But it has particularities. It has the particularities. Between aql, which is completely mujarrad, and these human beings, for example, we should have something in between, which is misali or barzakhi. For horses, the same. So, this is different from misal of Aflatun, which is Rabbul Noor, for all human beings. There is no particularity in that. Okay? So, now let us see what Sheikh Ishraq says about this type. So, please remember the way we have made progress. So, we talked about Nur al-Anwar, then Nur al-Aqrab, which is the first thing created by Nur al-Anwar, then about Anwar Qahiriyya Tuliyya, hierarchical lights. Then we talked about Anwar Qahiriyya Arziyya, which are Musul Aflatuni. Now the next step is to talk about Misal Munfasil. He calls this Alam Ashbah Mujarrad. Shabah, like ghost, because Shabah of a person has some particularities. Yeah, but you cannot, for example, hold it and keep it. Shabah is not something that accepts physical control. You can put the body of a person into a room and lock the door, but you cannot imprison Shabah of someone because there is no physical mass. So, unlike pre-pathetic philosophers who didn't believe in an independent world, Sheikh Sohrawardi believed in independent world for the material things in a higher level. This is between Alam Uqul and Anwar Qahire on the one hand, and Alam Madde and Barzakh Zulumani on the other hand. Alam Madde is the lowest, Uqul is higher, between the two. This had impact on people after Sheikh Ishraq, mystics, philosophers. Even Ayatollah Misbah in some of his books, maybe you have seen, that accepts this. Maybe in Hikmat Muta'aliyah, there is no way not to accept this, this Alam Misal Munfasil. In Bidayah and Nihaya also we have this. Allama Tabatabai mentions this. So, it has shape, size, color, and particularities like material things, but on the other hand is immaterial. So it has something from both sides. This is independent and higher than material universe. But still, we don't count this as Musul Aflatuni, because Musul Aflatuni don't have particularities. There is no shakl, shape, miqdar or size or color, etc. He calls أشباه مجرده also مثل معلقه. معلقه means suspended. Why he calls this suspended? Because he is not part of the realms below or above. It's in between, and it is not part of the top one or part of the lower one. It's in between, independent. Not completely, of course, independent, because it has to come from somewhere existentially, but means that this is independent realm, not part of material realm or part of the hierarchical light or horizontal lights. He says he had continuous intuitions, not just once, repeated intuitions and mystical experiences about Alam al-Misal. Actually, this is one of the easiest mukashafat that people may have, to have encounter with some individuals, maybe someone who has passed away, they can have encounter and see it like a human being, as we see in the dream. So he said he had repeated mystical experiences, but also he has rational arguments. In Ishraqi approach, we always see that there is attempt to use mystical experiences but also argue rationally. No one should think that Sheikh Ishraq didn't bother about reasoning. He was a philosopher, so he was trying to also argue rationally. He says, what we can understand and imagine, for example, when we are having dream, this cannot come from our brain or any physical substance. Why? Look at his argument. The core of his argument is, he says, because we have understanding on things which are greater than our brain. In Bidaya and Nihaya also we had this, when we wanted to talk about wujud zihni, or about immateriality of knowledge. If we were understanding things in a very small size, then we could say this is something in the brain. But when we understand things and we have understanding of their greatness, not just by comparison, we say, okay, what I understand is very little, but maybe it is several times more. No, you can, when you look at the mountain, for example, you can see something greater than your brain, the physical brain, okay? This is what we use in Bidaya and Nihaya. Here, he says, when we are imagining a mithali existence, we know that this is much greater than our brain. For example, I am having a dream of a person, or if I can have encounter with a spirit of someone, then this cannot be the work of the brain. Because intiba'ul kabir fis-saqir, something greater to be contained and to be embraced by something smaller. It's not possible. So these misali forms must be mujarrad. If they were maddi, they had to be put in the brain as one physical object is put in a physical container. But this is not possible here. So the role of our brain is to be just a place that is like a mazhar, is a place that immaterial existence can appear to us. But it's not inside the brain. Don't think that it is inside the brain. Or he says another argument. When you have dream of someone, for example, you have dream of your grandfather, then all of a sudden you wake up. Can you say, my grandfather was in front of me now? Yes, when in the dream was in front of you, but you can say it was here, this side of the room, this direction, or my grandfather was in that corner. No. So it shows that it's not a physical or material substance. Jawhar Misali is not something in the room or in this world that you can point and hint at it. Or if you wake up after a dream, you don't feel that you are moving. If it was in this world, then it must be like going from one physical place or location to another physical location. But we don't see any motion when we wake up after a dream. So it must be mujarrad, it must be immaterial. All this, of course, is for alam misal munfasil, and he doesn't talk that much, or he's not that much concerned about alam misal muttasil, which is our imagination or things which are inside us. He has also tried to explain according to his own innovative intuitions. He has tried to not just talk in a very general way, he has tried to classify these things that exist in alam misal munfasil and give us a kind of introduction to them, a kind of survey of the things which are there. And perhaps this helps for having better understanding of what happens to us or what we are going to see after we die. Because the universe that we are going to after we die, barzakh, is the same as alam misal munfasil, of the same nature. So he studies the things that we are seeing in alam misal, and this helps with getting some understanding of the time when we die. He believes also that some of the extraordinary acts, some of the miracles that happen are related to this part. Now, is alam misal also from light? Musul Aflatuni are anwar qahire ya arziye, they are light. Ughul are also anwar, hierarchical. What about this? Is this also light or not? Certainly it's not light like Musul Aflatuni or Anwar Tuliye, but it is not free from light. He calls it Sharq Awsat. Sharq Awsat, today we use it for Middle East. yeah, Middle East. But he means by Sharq Awsat a place that there is radiation, but it's middle, higher than what we have in dunya, in this material world, which are mixed with darkness, and lower than alam anwar, tuli or arzi. So it is Sharq Awsat, it's the middle place of light. Above Sharq Awsat is Sharq A'zam. Anwar, Qahiriyya, Tuliyya and Arziyya, they are Sharq A'zam, greater east or greater place of radiation. Under Sharq Awsat is Gharb, west, but west in the sense that where light is setting, is going to decline. This is the material world. These Misali beings, they don't have knowledge of themselves. They don't have necessarily, knowledge of themselves. They don't have knowledge by presence. Therefore, they are not completely mujarrad, because mujarrad has to have knowledge by presence of himself. So they don't have that kind of capacity. This is why they are not very high, but higher than the physical things, material things. I read for you just few lines. He says, از سوی دیگر شواهدی در دست است که وی این اشباح مجرد را از علم ذات به ذات بی بهره می داند. So we have evidence that Sheikh Ishraq believes that these Misali beings don't have knowledge about their own selves. و بنابراین نباید این صور به حسب اصل ذات خود هویت نوری داشته باشند. Therefore they are not mujarrad, because every mujarrad has to have knowledge of his own essence. Therefore they are not in essence a matter of light, because light is for mujarradat. Even he has gone further. So this is our argument, but he didn't clearly say this. We are arguing from his positions, but he has explicitly said that some of these misali images or forms, they have sowar zulmani. They have dark forms or images. So if they were by nature, by essence light, how come then they have some of them sowar zulmani? So it means that it is something in between. By essence doesn't have light because it's not mujarrad, it doesn't have knowledge about itself, but it is a more kind of refined type of being compared to material beings. It's more refined, it's more closer to the realm of the light. So it's not Sharq A'zam and not Maghrib. It's Sharq Awsat, or the Sharq Adna. Maybe we can call it Sharq Adna, but he calls it Sharq Awsat. He calls it also Iqlim Hashtum, the eighth continent, We have 7 continents which are material. This is above them, the 8th of them, the 8th of the 7. The fact that he says it's the 8th means that it's not very high compared to them. It's higher, definitely, but not very high, like the Anwar. So it's called the 8th Iqlim. And even in this Iqlim, we have cities, like we have cities in continents. World, in the world, for example, in Asia we have cities, in Europe we have cities. In this 8th continent also we have cities, but of course those cities are different from the cities that we have on the earth. Inshallah, next week we will talk about Anwar Esfahbudi, about nufus, which is lower than this, and then we will continue with the explanation about the material world after that.